What's up, BookTube? I'm Traben. These are my tomes, and today we're looking at everything that I read in January and February, which is a lot. Let's talk about it. I should know better than to let this go so long, but I've been having some troubles with just motivating myself to get up and do these reviews. We have over 50 books to talk about, so let's just jump into it. No particular order, and at some point I'm going to have to reference which audiobooks I read and just tack those on at the end. So, first thing up is I read Mr. Villain's Day Off Volumes 1 through 6 collectively. This is a fun new series from Square Enix that follows the life of a Super Sentai villain as he takes his days off. And on his days off, he doesn't want to do anything with work, and that includes interacting with the Rangers at all. He wants to go to the zoo to see pandas, and he wants to eat ice cream, and he helps children. It's very funny, and it plays with the tropes of Super Sentai a little bit, but I don't think you have to be someone who watches Power Rangers or Super Sentai to enjoy the humor of a villain who just is concerned with self-care and wants to get out and have a nice time around town. So that's 6 of the books so far. I hesitate to even count this one, but I did read Rivals Ignite, which is a one-shot from Peach Momoko, Yuji Kaku, and Mitsuyasu Sakai, which takes place in Peach Momoko's alternate Marvel universe, where all the Marvel characters are a mashup of their actual character from the Marvel comics and also Japanese yokai and folklore. So this had some fun stories. I didn't realize when I picked it up that it was 3 different authors. I just saw Peach Momoko and saw the cover and hadn't heard of it before. This seems like it's setting up another round of comics from that universe. So we had Demon Days and then Demon Wars, and this seems like it's setting up some kind of new story in that universe. So I'm very excited about that. But if you're a fan of Peach Momoko like me, you're a fan of Japanese folklore, and you want to see it mashed up with Marvel superheroes, this is probably the only place you're going to find that. One of the only places you're going to find it, but it is like a single issue comic, which is why I'm like, I don't know if I should really count this. But it's on my cart, so it's on the list. Ding. All right. Next up, we have Hellsing Deluxe Edition Volume 1. So I picked this up for Winterween. I needed something with a vampire. This is a very famous vampire from my youth. I have mixed feelings on the issue itself because it does deal with some SA topics in a very flippant and very like 90s way. It is definitely a product of its time. It got me very nostalgic for this type of comic. I watched the anime series when I was younger. I never picked up the manga, but it's just very edgy 90s nonsense. I think I ended up with a 3 or a 4 on this one. If you're someone like me who grew up in the 90s with like the new wave of exploding anime that was coming out at the time, if you remember Hellsing fondly, you might do well to pick this up. I am interested in continuing the series, so it was good enough for me to continue investing in it and looking into it, but I do have some issue with the theming. Although the story goes in a completely different direction than I remember the anime. I remember it kind of ending on a note, and so it does make sense because this is going a completely different direction. It has a lot more dealing with Nazis and the occult. So maybe if you're a fan of something like Hellboy as far as world building and kind of the thrust of the narrative revolving around that, might be another good reason to pick it up. But I had fun with it. It's just I'm still a little bit nervous about it. I read The Christmas Murder Game as one of my lingering Christmas murder mystery month titles. This one I remember being pretty fun, although I feel like the ending was not what I was expecting and a little frustrating because of the way that it all kind of wraps up nicely. I also felt like the puzzles in here were not really puzzles you could solve. I mean, beyond the ones that the author puts in. So this is an author that really likes anagrams, and so they'll tell you at the beginning that at every day, within the day, there'll be an anagram for the 12 Days of Christmas songs. You need to find that, and I don't bother with that. I'm not good with anagrams, so I can't easily pick up on like awkwardly worded sentences that were kind of created to make that. But I remember the puzzles themselves being fun to read about and being based on poetry predominantly, but being absolutely impossible for you to figure out as a reader, like going along with it. So at some point I just kind of gave up and was like, okay, I'm along for the ride. It was a fun little murder mystery. Like I said, I felt like the ending was a little bit too clean. But if you're looking for something in that vein, if you're looking for murder mysteries set at Christmas, if you like family drama, or you like that kind of locked room situation where everybody is snowed in this case, to one location and there's somebody on the loose that is a killer, this is a good read. It was fun, and it was quick too. Like, it was a very easy read. I read The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinneman. This is Dungeon Crawler Carl book 4, and it's the first book that I really feel like Dinneman is hitting his stride with this particular story. I've read other things from Dinneman. I read Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon, and I felt like that had a very good arc and a very good story to it. My problem with Dungeon Crawler Carl up to this point has been, while the story is fantastic, characters are amazing, I love the video game references and the over-the-top bombast of the series, I don't feel like the books stand alone very well. They don't tell a good arc within the story, and I felt like this one really did pace itself well and left the really big payoffs to the end. I felt like the puzzle of this floor was complicated enough that it required some thinking, but not so convoluted that I stopped paying attention like I did with the railway floor. I stopped caring about that. Another problem with earlier titles is he has these ongoing storylines happening as the series is progressing, and sometimes those will take will take over a story. So again, with, I think this was book 2. It must have been book 3. There was a moment where there was this really important ongoing story beat that happened right in the middle of the book, felt like the climax of the story, and then the rest of it was just like a lot of info dumping. It really killed the momentum of the story. This does not have that problem. This does a very good job of like telling the story, having all the background, ongoing things kind of take a back seat until the end when we do have kind of a final confrontation. Some of those things do come up, and it wraps up very nicely. So for the first time, I really I gave this one 5 stars, and I feel like this is the first time that it really felt like a complete narrative within one of the books. I read Godzilla Monsterpiece Theater. I wasn't quite sure how to feel about this for like half the book. And then when it got to the end, I was like, okay, we're just doing, like, we're being super silly. We're not trying to take this seriously. There were random lines of The Great Gatsby in here, which was really weird to read because I had read Great Gatsby last year, like fall of last year, with my students. It's one of the books for my AP Lang class, and so I recognized the excerpts they were taking and kind of putting in a new context, and I was like, that's weird. Are we trying to make this highbrow? Because it's really ridiculous. We have all these characters that are fighting against Godzilla, and no, we're being super silly with this. It, I think, is trying to kind of evoke this feeling of like an older campy movie. And by the end, I was with it. If you enjoy Godzilla and you want to see something weird and different being done with a character, I would definitely recommend this. That's really my jam. I think this one and Godzilla Skate or Die, but also like you have to be okay with kind of a dated art style as well. Like I said, I really think this is trying to capture like an old art style, an old feeling, both with the art and with the way the story progresses. You know, you've got characters that are just like outright evil. You've got ones that are, and we kind of play a bit with the relationships of the characters in The Great Gatsby. I don't think this is like a good representation of the Great Gatsby story, but I think it is a lot of fun at the end of the day. And it did make me smile toward the end when we have Gatsby versus Godzilla as our climactic battle. I read Books of Slaughter. I can't remember if I read one last year or if I read one this year, but I have read 1 and 2, so I will update the counter in the corner to let you know if I read both this year. This is for the people who are Something is Killing the Children lore nerds, because a good chunk of each book is just like the in-universe handbooks for the slayers who go out and kill the monsters within this world. It is advancing the story of a side character that I think we established in like the mainline comic ages ago, and is kind of talking about her evolution, moving from one house to another. But yeah, I think that this is only going to be for the fans of the series who just need another fix and need something else to tide them over. I don't think a casual person picking this up is going to find much enjoyment out of it, because the actual comic itself only goes for about the first maybe fifth of the book, right? A very small amount, and the rest of it kind of alternates between these textbook pages and the rest of the story, but it's predominantly the books, the in-universe books. And then for the second half of each of these issues, it's just the script to page. So it's the same thing you just read, just showing you how it goes from script to sketch to final product. So again, for super fans of the series, I think you'll get a kick out of it. You should definitely read it. It gives a lot more breakdown of the different types of monsters and how to deal with each of them. But for a casual reader, I don't think you're going to find much enjoyment out of this. It's way too in the weeds with its topic, with its subject matter, and with the just, again, like info dumping about the world and the lore of this comic book series. I read Universal Monsters Frankenstein and The Mummy, and while these are completely different books by completely different authors, they are under the same line, so I'm going to talk about them together. I really liked Frankenstein. I feel like this one evoked a lot of the feelings of the original movie, the classic Universal Monsters movie, and played a lot with color. I feel like The Mummy was not as enjoyable, partially because I don't think the art really matched the style. I don't feel like the art matched the story. It was a little bit too like rounded and cartoony for me. I like that like grittier, real, like the cover here. I like the grittier, realistic art, and that is not what is found inside. I felt like the story itself was a little disjointed, and I felt like the revelations here and the things that were maybe supposed to be shocking were just more frustrating than anything. But if you are a fan of Universal Monsters, I think you will get a kick out of either one of these. I would definitely recommend Frankenstein over The Mummy, but both are good reads. I read through Osaka Mime, which I just picked up because it looked cool. This is from Behemoth Comics. This is about a world in which monsters are well known, and a couple of police officers are going after a mime or a mimic that they know has been killing, and it's kind of a character study of these two officers more than it is just like an action adventure romp or even really a horror story. So I feel like the end is fairly bleak, but in the world in which it's set, it makes a lot of sense. It was a fast read. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I think I only gave it like 3 stars, so it was fine. It just, like I said, it kind of grabbed my attention with this cool cover, and I had an okay time reading it. I just felt like for what it was very slow paced, and then at the end, rather underwhelming with its conclusion. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend this to very many people. If you're a big fan of the kind of Japanese urban legend type stories, this is a world in which those are made real. And it treats, I think it had an intriguing aspect of world building where these are known entities and like known things by the police force, not like a special division of the police force or anything like that. Just everybody knows these things exist. And one of them happens to be a killer, and so they have to bring it to justice. So I think that kind of did undercut the horror a little bit, because it wasn't like an otherworldly thing. It was just another aspect of the world that these people inhabit. But yeah, like I said, if it sounds cool to you, pick it up. It's a quick read. It just didn't really blow me away. I read Ice Cream Man, the Mortal Coil Shuffle, which I already made a short about, but in case you didn't see that, this is a deck of cards that is also a 55-page comic book. It was a lot of fun. I've been wanting to pick up Ice Cream Man for a while now, and they are pushing the envelope on what comics can do. So they've done an issue that can read forward or backwards. They've done an issue that splits into 3 stories, and you can follow the 3 stories like concurrently, or you could read one story, go back, read the other story. This one was a deck of cards, and it tries to incorporate a couple of different card types into the story as well, like trading card games, playing cards, business cards as well. And I found it largely successful and a lot of fun. And unfortunately, it was a limited run. Like they ran it once, and once the copies are gone, they're gone. But it was just so cool. I wanted to get it so bad. So yeah, I mean, I'd recommend it if you can find it. It was definitely fun. Probably the most fun I've had reading a book in quite a while. But yeah, and just like everything about it, they have instructions on the back about not shuffling it. They've got a little warning here about like it's not too late to turn back right on the edge of the opening. So I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was neat. I love pushing the envelope when it comes to form. If you watched my take on House of Leaves, you'll know that I really enjoyed the stories within stories and the difficulty of telling like what's really happening. This is taking a book and putting it into card form and trying to play with that as much as you can. Had a lot of fun with it. Would definitely, like I said, would definitely recommend it if you can find it. I read through One Piece Volume 110, and I had this was another one I made a short of, about how it's hard to rate comics or hard to rate long-form manga series and long-form comics because you're taking all of the feelings you have for these characters up to that point into it as well. I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. I gave it 5 stars. If you're at 110 of One Piece, like, of course, you're going to pick it up and you're probably going to love it. If you have not started One Piece, you should look at One Piece. It's great. It's amazing. And I feel like it is only gaining in popularity over the last few years. So if you get up to the end of Arlong Park and it's still not doing it for you, just stop. Like, it's not going to get any better than that. This one I feel like had quite a bit of lore drops. We had some characters coming back that we haven't seen in a while, which was fun. We finish up, I think we had already finished up Bartholomew Kuma's backstory, but we're getting to the end game now, where we are at the level where we are fighting some of the strongest people in the entire world. And so it definitely feels like we are moving toward a conclusion to the series, and I'm really looking forward to it. I read Ultimate X-Men Volume 3, which continues the story that has been formulating in this book. Again, like, I'm already in it. I'm already committed to finishing this one up. This one I feel like didn't introduce a lot new, and I think moved a little bit slower than I would have liked. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars, even with my bump of, this is a Peach Momoko story. It's got an amazing art. It has all the background information that you would like to see from her. Probably not the strongest, even within the series. Unfortunately, I feel like it has slowed down considerably, but it seems like we're moving towards something a little bit bigger. Hopefully the next volume will up the stakes a little bit and push the story forward. We do learn some important revelations in this one regarding Armor's past, and what happened between her and the boy who's been like a key element of the story so far. But beyond that, I feel like we didn't do much to move the narrative forward. Still beautiful to look at, a lot of fun to read, fun for me to read. But I feel like it's not the strongest in the series, so I don't know if I'd recommend this one in particular, but you should read Ultimate X-Men. It's gorgeous, and it's, again, one of those things that it's fusing the Marvel canon with Japanese culture. This time, more modern-day Japanese school culture. It does have some elements of folklore built into some of their powers, but this is taking a more modern approach to like modern Japanese concerns. Even the idea of the cult and the cult leader, I think, stem from that. So if that's something you're interested in, seeing the fusion of Marvel with X-Men with Japanese culture, then definitely pick it up and give it a read. I read Transformers Volume 4, which continues the trend of being like the most violent, over-the-top Transformers adaptation I think I've ever seen. The end is bonkers, and I think is something that was making a lot of waves in the subreddit when it happened. So I had a little bit of a spoiler about that. But this is continuing the story. It's moving forward well, introducing some interesting concepts with the Matrix of Leadership, expanding on the Transformers lore, and generally being over the top with its depiction of violence, and a rather, I think, more realistic view of what would happen if sadistic giant robots decided to invade the planet. So then you got with like the 80s cartoon. Again, this is one that I've read a few issues into, so of course I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. I want to keep going with it. But I would pick up Transformers, not necessarily if you're just nostalgic for the 80s TV series, because it definitely isn't that. But if you want to see a more, I don't know, testosterone-filled depiction of it, Daniel Warren Johnson, I've talked about before. He has this ability to fuse these over-the-top, bombastic fight scenes and violence with like very human moments. And I feel like this volume really highlighted that more so than we've gotten in the recent installments, where we have the human characters really having a moment to talk about the feelings they're having, and there's a father-son dynamic going on that again with like the Allspark kind of making for an interesting moment between those two characters and Optimus Prime. If you like giant robots beating each other up and having epic fights, pick it up. I read the art of Witch Hat Atelier, which had very little actual writing in it, and far more just beautiful pictures. So I have been championing Witch Hat Atelier for a while now. It won my manga tournament from a few years back when I first started the channel, and so to get my hands on this art book was just super great. This was a gift for Christmas, and so yeah, just being able to look at the beautiful art. Now I will say, like, the background information they give, talking a little bit about the art style inspirations of Kamome Shirahama was nice to see. Really, you're just getting this to gaze at the beautiful art and to take in all those rich details. I have seen the trailer for the anime that's coming out soon, and I plan on posting a reaction kind of recap of that soon, because I'm very excited that that's coming out. I hope it means that we get more like official merch and fun stuff from this series. But yeah, if you haven't picked up Witch Hat Atelier, like, it is in the running for my best manga. It's hard to dethrone One Piece. I'm really, really reluctant to say that it's better than One Piece, but if I sat down and thought about it, as far as like the pacing goes and the art, it's just so beautiful, and everybody should read it. I actually used Witch Hat Atelier for my Valentine's Day lesson this year. Every year I do a speed dating lesson in my classroom where the kids bring in their favorite book and we talk about them for a minute at a time, and I brought in Witch Hat Atelier, and I think I managed to convince a couple of kids to pick it up, so hopefully we got more converts. I hope I can convince others to read it, because it's really, really good. I read Chainsaw Man 9, 10, and 11, I think the 3, so 3 more up there. This was really good. I was a little bit burnt out on Chainsaw Man. I felt like there was one arc where we introduced a lot of new villains and the fight scenes weren't working for me, and it was a lot of like convoluted mess. But this wraps up the first major arc, the first major story of Chainsaw Man, and I think it did so in a way that was really compelling. So not only was it incredibly serious at times, but also like really funny in a grim way. So like, this is a comedy series at its heart, which I think you sometimes lose sight of amid all the grisly violence that's happening on screen. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought I knew from reviews and other things I had watched that there was something up with Makima, and I think at this point in the series, there's something going on with her. But to find out what it was, and then to find out what had been happening through the entire series, like the entire thrust of what had been set up, was just so good. I also knew some minor spoilers of things moving forward, and I was like, I don't know if that's going to work for me, but within the story, I'm okay with it. I'm going to continue moving forward. I look forward to continuing it and seeing where the story is going to go, but a great conclusion for this first arc. Really exciting, a lot of fun, and like I said, it managed to do both the like poignant, very serious moments and the offbeat comedy moments in a really fun way. So yeah, if you've not checked out Chainsaw Man at this point, and you want something that has that over-the-top violence, has that like shonen action core to it, but also can be really funny, it can really balance these tragic moments with comedy moments, it's one of the best that is being published right now doing that. I read Kakegurui Volume 19, which at this point has completely diverted from what happened in the anime series or the live action or any other adaptation of the story, some that we will not talk about. But I really like where the story is going. They are, of course, they're having to continuously up the stakes, and so now we're kind of beyond just what's happening at the school. We have this whole idea of former students that are coming back, and like they're the best for their generation or the best for their graduating year, and so a new round of challenges and fun games, of death, not really of death, but games of high stakes gambling and possibly completely ruining your entire future are occurring. As always, this volume just introduced the new game, and they kind of played a few rounds. I'm sure in the next volume we're going to talk about all the ways we can break this and what the actual strategy should be and what we should actually be doing. I like that a lot about these gambling type manga, is trying to figure out the puzzle of the game that they're playing and how is the character going to get out of it this time. Are they just going, is it a mind game? Is it more of like manipulating the rules? What do we need to do to beat this newest competitor? I don't think that the game they're currently in is going to end up being like one of the major center point kind of games, like the really, really important ones. I think it's just meant to set the stage for this next arc of the series. I am kind of glad that we're out of the flashback arc, because while that was giving okay motivation for our main character, I ultimately think that it doesn't super matter. We all know why Momobami is gambling at this point. It's because she loves it and she's crazy for gambling, and having the convoluted backstory, bringing that character back in to kind of up the stakes for this next little round was nice, but I don't think was super necessary. I didn't need to know the motivations of the character and like into her entire upbringing to root for her and to continue reading the story. I read Blood on the Tracks 5, which continues to be very creepy despite not a lot happening. Like the art on this really sells a lot of the story, and I feel like this one in particular is highlighting that none of the choices our main character has are good ones, and that his life is just possibly beyond repair, beyond the ability for anyone to really help him get out of it. And it seems it really drove home this despair, this idea that he is trapped in a cycle. I never know where this story is going to go. And within each volume, not a whole lot's happening. So these read incredibly quickly because there's very little dialogue. Like I said, the facial expressions, the small moments of movement and touching, and the characters' expressions sell a lot of the story, where you don't really need a whole lot of dialogue. And I never know what to expect from his mom. Like I'm always on edge with what she's going to do, even though like she hasn't done a lot, but it just seems like she could, and I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop. So yeah, this is a good like psychological thriller. I could see people though like really not enjoying this. I could see people picking this up and being like, nothing is happening, barely anything occurs within a volume. There's no major action within it, because it's meant to be, I think, a very slow moving, very slow burn of ramping up tension, and I'm just waiting for the tension to burst, for something to happen, and so we'll see how it goes. But I love it. I think the book is really compelling, and I want to continue the series. So if you are a fan of slow burn thrillers where the atmosphere is really selling it more than plot or even necessarily character, this is a good pick. I read The Library of Fate. I read this one mostly as an audiobook, and I enjoyed it okay. I feel like the story is your pretty standard action, mystical type adventure story. So the setup here is there's a library that can basically read people, and if you say a certain phrase, I believe it is "show me the book that I need" or something along those lines, and the librarian can find a book that will help you grow as a person. And there's more to it than that. The book dives into what powers the library and why that artifact is so dangerous. And then, again, kind of becomes a globe-hopping adventure story where we're trying to figure out what happened. There's a little bit of a mystery element to it, both with what happened to one of the characters in the present, but also what happened with a relationship in the past. And I think, again, this is one that, given the stakes and given the way that the story was progressing, I feel like the end is a little too easy for our protagonist, given like what had happened before. I think there should have been more weight to some of these choices that she had made before the events of the book. But there's also this like consistent back and forth between what happened in the past, I think 5 years ago, and what was happening now, which was fine. It wasn't difficult to follow or anything like that. But it was mostly used for these like moments of recontextualizing what happened in the past. I thought that was fun at times, and then kind of wore a little bit toward the end. So if you're looking for a book about books, if you're looking for a book about like a magical library, and you like that kind of mystery globe hopping adventure story, I think it's fun. I think it's fine. It just didn't do anything more than that for me. I think this one ended up at 3 or 4. So yeah, like if that sounds intriguing, pick it up. I read House of Slaughter, the Butcher's Trilogy, which collects volumes 1, 3, and 5 of House of Slaughter, because those are all one continuous story that we separated with another trilogy of books that's going to be collected in another Ultimate Edition. But I would definitely recommend, if you've not read any of those, if you've read Something is Killing the Children and you would like to get into House of Slaughter, if you want to read these side stories that expand on the Something is Killing the Children universe, but you're not so in that you want to read actual textbook stuff, from Books of Slaughter, I would pick this up, honestly, because it does tell the full arc of the story, and I feel like this is the best way to read it. Reading the House of Slaughter graphic novels in order was a little bit difficult because they were spread out, months apart, and then you'd pick up Volume 2 after having read the first part of the Butcher's Trilogy, and it would be these completely different characters that had nothing to do with what you were reading before. And then you'd pick up the next one, and it would be the Butcher's Trilogy again. Then you'd pick up the next one, and it's like, okay, it's back to this story that I read like several months ago. I can't even remember what happened, right? So I think it's better to read it all in one go. I like the hardcovers. We might not be able to see this, but it's got like embossed teeth on it as well, which is like the symbol of their order. They all wear masks with those teeth on it. So just like really great production, oversized, so you can really appreciate the art inside the book. And I felt like reading the story as one cohesive whole was worth picking it up. Was worth getting this. I could have pulled out 1, 3, and 5 and read them in order, but just having it in one package, very convenient. The story itself, very good. Talks a lot about revenge and love, betrayal, and really doesn't take a side with like who's right or who's wrong about these things, which I really appreciated. Usually you'll have like very heavy-handed, like moralistic conclusions to those questions. And here I feel like we have different sides arguing for different things, and you can see the rationale behind the different arguments, and even those that you don't agree with, you can understand why that character feels that way and like what has happened to them to make them the person they are. So I feel like the character work is very strong, and the story is also very captivating to read, and has big ramifications for what's happening in Something Is Killing the Children. So I think it's also worth the read if you want to have some more context behind events in the mainline comic as well. I read the Whisperwicks, The Labyrinth of Lost and Found, which is a young reader book, I think. Or I think this is young reader. A fun adventure story, like really just I'm not even going to say by the numbers. I think the world building is very interesting. So it is about a kid who gets who kind of tumbles into this alternate universe that is the entire world is a giant labyrinth, and the people there are all cursed with being lost. So like you can go a couple of blocks either direction from your home and remember how to get back home, but if you go any farther, then you get lost. It's this whole like maze metaphor. The character is trying to help find a missing person, and they are going through and collecting basically like one-time voicemails that the person has left. They're magic. They're Whisperwicks. But all the while being pursued by the magical police and this like shadowy cabal, and finding out truths about the world that nobody else really seems to be able to discover, because again, people can't really explore this world. People can't really put things together. And they're very fortunate in having a MacGuffin that allows them to do that. So, yeah, I mean, the typical stuff you'd expect from a young reader book. There are some things that are just very convenient. I felt like the end was very powerful, and made a lot of sense. Like there's a reveal later on in the book that I'm sure some readers are going to be able to pick up on very quickly, but kind of took me by surprise. Almost made me cry. Almost made me cry. Not this time, books. So the only complaint I have about the main complaint I have about this book is that one of the villains gets something that they want, and then we act like that didn't happen. Like, it's not even that we talk about it and we go, oh, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. It's like he gets this thing and is like, ha ha ha, now I can do something. And all the characters are like, but anyway, back to our quest, and they never mention it again. And then, okay, so this is a trilogy of books. I'm probably going to pick up the second one. It was fun. I liked it. But then the third book is like that villain character from this one. They're like, oh, when he suddenly reappears and shocks everyone. I'm like, why? Why did he shock anyone? We knew that he was doing this. He told us expressly in this book that was what he was going to do. We all just decided, don't worry about it, it's fine. So that bothered me. But like I said, other than that, it was a fun fantasy adventure. Another thing that is really cool is everybody in the maze world, they all have like puppets, and they can turn their puppets into like real life animals, and their lives are linked, and it's just, again, it's a fun world to explore, and very imaginative. It's just that one thing, that one plot point really bothered me. But other than that, it was great, and I had a lot of fun reading it. I would recommend it for sure. I read Duel Masters Dreamwave Pocket Edition Volume 2. I kind of wish I hadn't. But I had to, because then I was done with the series. This is bad. This is bad. Yeah, this is not good. It's not entertaining. I don't know if I would have been entertained with this when I was in high school. It's the art is very basic. I'm not happy with the art. The story, like, I read this less than a month ago. I couldn't tell you what happened. It's something to do with the other world, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Only it's Duel Masters, I guess. And there's an evil guy doing evil stuff. A father and son. It was not good. Don't read this. I read Puella Magi Madoka Magica, the movie Rebellion, which I could swear I already talked about. Did I not talk about this one already?
Did you make a short about it?
Maybe I made a short about it. Anyway, yeah, so this is one that I have. I've watched the movie. So the manga is based off the movie. The movie came first. And I was not a huge fan of the film, but mostly because of the way that it recontextualized my favorite character. Reading the book, knowing where the story was going to end, I think was fun, and I got a kick out of it because I was like waiting for the ball to drop. Like there's a big twist at the end, and so going into it, kind of having an idea of where the story was heading, I thought was fun. I thought it was something that it will probably benefit from a reread if it's their first time looking at it. I would probably recommend watching the movie. And the story's exactly the same. There's notes from the author in the original, in the first manga series, talking about the changes they made. The changes are mostly to make the art a little more simplified, and in the action scenes to think about what angles are going to work better for a manga versus an animation. So, but the story is exactly the same. The conclusion's exactly the same. I want to see if Oriko Magica or Suzune Magica, which are the two omnibuses I haven't read yet, will continue to expand on this, or if they're going to tell their own like side stories. But yeah, I enjoyed it more the second time round than I did watching the film. I had a better sense of what was going to happen, and therefore a better looking more closely at like what was motivating characters and where we ultimately ended. I also think there's something of a translation barrier here, where the way the characters talk about what happens at the end is kind of limited by how we use a certain word versus how Japan uses a certain word. I was reading up on it. Anyway, that's not important. Nobody cares. Okay. If you read the first one and you read Puella Magi Madoka Magica, read Puella Magi Madoka Magica first, and then if you really liked it, pick up the Wraith arc, which I'll talk about in a second, and then if you liked that, pick up this one. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I like these characters. I like this world building. I think deconstruction of magical girl genre is something that I've consumed a few things of in my life, and this is probably the best one. I read Hollow Kingdom. I believe this was also for it was my last 10 before the end of last year, and I got to it in February. Ooh. It might have been the end of January. So this is about a bird who has survived the zombie apocalypse of humans, and is basically discussing the zombie apocalypse through the eyes of him and his companions, other birds and other animals. I feel like I was really on board with this one until toward the end of the story, in which several things happen that I feel were only really done to be like malicious and like emotionally manipulative, in a way that really like broke me out of the story. There is a sequel to this book. I don't know if I'm going to read it, in all honesty. I think I gave this 3 stars. It was fine. It just is not something that I necessarily want to continue with when I have so many other good series to be reading. I feel like the premise is compelling, and definitely if you want a zombie apocalypse story with a twist and just something a little bit different from what you would normally expect, then you do good to pick this up. There is some talk of like the system the birds use to communicate with each other, and the system the trees use, and the animals in the sea use, and they're different networks basically. I found that all very fascinating, but like I said, toward the end it just became so mean-spirited and lazy with some of the things that were happening that it really bothered me. And so I don't know if I want to continue with book 2, but up until that point I was on board. It was fun until it wasn't. I read Inferno Girl Red book 2, which is a Kickstarter I backed a year ago, I want to say, over a year ago. And I think this will come out I think I've seen it on the newsstands, like the individual issues are being released now. If you are interested in picking it up in like floppies, I'm sure there will be a collected edition later, but this is somewhat of an advanced copy. Inferno Girl Red is set in the Massiveverse, along with like Rogue Sun and Radiant Black. This is a very Kamen Rider inspired series. It takes place in, I want to say it's like a space colony, which gives me vibes of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Gives me vibes of that show. And in this one we have a bit of character development with our main character. We're developing some of the side characters, and introducing a character to be kind of an assistant, like a second writer, which is a very common theme in the Kamen Rider series. I felt like it was fun. I certainly enjoyed it, and if you're a tokusatsu fan, I think you're going to get a kick out of it. I know we're all lamenting the fact that Super Sentai just ended, but really, I think Super Sentai fans are eating good right now, and books like this are one of the reasons why. So if you are a fan of Kamen Rider, if you are a fan of Power Rangers, that type of thing, if you want to see an action series in space where a complicated female character turns into a crazy on fire fighter and delivers kicks to the enemies, this is a good pick. The art is great. Probably one of the better splash pages. We have the 2 characters in profile with like some insert shots of fights they had earlier. Have like these big splash pages when the characters transform, which are a lot of fun, with like catchphrases and like their character name, which is reminiscent of some of the more recent Kamen Rider series, like Kamen Rider 01. But again, like even outside of like being a Super Sentai fan, or being a Kamen Rider fan, I think if you just want like a fun action story with a female lead, it's a great book. I read Go-Go Loser Ranger 15, which is pretty much the start of a new arc within this series. At this point, this has become something far different than what it initially was, because there are so many characters, so many backstories that we've explored. We just got done with a major fight arc, and so now we're in the process, in a similar vein to a Radiant Black that I looked at recently. The most recent Radiant Black that came out, we are kind of rebuilding and restructuring. Unlike my criticisms of that Radiant Black issue, I do feel like there's a good bit that's happening in this volume, and a good bit that's still carrying over and carrying through. So we're still dealing with repercussions of events that happened, issues ago. We still have the singular focus of our protagonist, but we know now more of the scope of why it's going to be so difficult for him to achieve his goals. And also there's like new wrinkles to the world. We still have a lot of questions about exactly how this world works, and the connection between the Dragon Keepers and the Dragon Keeper show that apparently happened before they existed. So I still have a lot of questions, and so yeah, there's a mix of action, mystery, a lot of like interpersonal drama between a lot of the characters. Even the side characters get enough development that you can, find something in here that's intriguing, that is built on solid character building, even amid all the convoluted nature of the story itself. This really is one I went back and just I went back and binged the series last year, and I really do think this is one that benefits from reading a number of volumes at once. So if you're interested in Go-Go Loser Ranger and you've not actually picked it up yet, I think now is a good time, because you could read up to, I think, the volume right before here, 14, and get like a whole huge arc, that first major story out of the way, and be able to follow it a bit better than reading it a couple months apart, because I do feel like so much happens in the volumes, and there's such a complicated nature behind the main character's power and the things that he does and his machinations that makes it hard to follow if you're leaving too much of a gap between the issues. But of course, again, it's Super Sentai. It is in ways a deconstruction of that genre. It's really like flipping the script of the Rangers being the villains and the monsters being the heroes. But I am really enjoying the series and have already picked up volume 16, just haven't gotten to it yet. So would recommend this one for sure, especially if you are a fan of Super Sentai. All right, I read Destroy All Humans, They Can't Be Regenerated, volume 6. Again, I'm 6 volumes in. I'm obviously enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. You get a promo card for Magic the Gathering if you're a player. That's a good incentive. But also, like, it is still a very cute slice of life, middle school romance story. In this volume, we finally we make some progress with that relationship, because we have had kind of a back and forth as the series has gone on. So I feel like we're actually moving forward. We're taking steps to develop that relationship a little bit more. And of course, at the same time, we are moving forward with the history of Magic the Gathering. There's a point in here where they talk about these multiple bannings that were happening because these decks were incredibly powerful. And those bannings actually ended up making another deck even more dominant than the ones that they tried to correct for. And I was around for when those things were happening, so I found that really fun. We're definitely moving into the parts of Magic the Gathering history where I was an active player and was at least tangentially aware of the scene and like some of the combo decks and things that were happening around that time. So that's another thing that really appeals to it for me. Just the characters are really compelling and fun to follow, and I think that the romance is fine. Like, it's not normally my thing, but I enjoy it, and I think it's a good way to kind of couch the story. It's a good story to kind of to play around the history of Magic the Gathering with. So, of course, for me, I love this. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. But your mileage may vary. I don't think it's going to be as appealing to people who are not familiar with that scene or have not played Magic the Gathering. I definitely had fun with it. The only thing is, I did notice a weird printing problem. There's a thing where they have these shirts, and for most of the panels we have translated that to English, but there were a few that we missed. And there was also a part where they tend to show the cards, and they have translated, again, the English on all the cards, but there's one card that someone plays, and we left the original Japanese on there. And it's not super important, but it does just kind of speak to are we checking all these things? And like, why even change the shirts in the first place? We could have just had a quick note about what that phrase translated to, and then we wouldn't have to worry about trying to edit it every single time and catching every single panel that had that shirt on it. So I don't know. Minor gripe, but overall love the book. I read the Luminous, Fairies, and Mothra, which was less of a... So this is in the side. This was in the sci-fi section, and I would argue that it is less sci-fi and more of a like media criticism, not criticism, like media analysis, because more than half of this book is the editor's note about the book and all the history surrounding it and the authors who created it, the political commentary and what was surrounding that, like. And that was the part that I found fascinating. The story itself is it probably would have gotten 2 stars. But with the commentary, I put it up to 4 because it's been a while since I've actually listened to or read a very engaging media criticism or media deconstruction. And I really enjoyed learning about the history of the story. And I'm familiar with a lot of the production side of Godzilla, and so I recognize some names that were brought up and some of the things they were talking about with like Eiji Tsuburaya coming back from a tour to make a propaganda video, and that kind of setting off in part this weird amalgamation of Pacific Island culture, like what we would call tiki culture, and how that kind of influenced the Mothra book, which was commissioned by the studio to basically serve as a template for the film, which is why as a story it's not really great. It's just hitting the major beats that the movie has to pick up on. As an artifact of history and as a kind of breakdown of why this story came into being and how it influenced the making of the movie, really fascinating. The story itself, kind of okay, but also only 40 something pages, so like you can get through it quick and then you can read all the fascinating history behind it. If you're a big fan of kaiju movies, this would be something that I think you should pick up and take a look at. Other than that, I don't know if you'd really be interested in this. Maybe if you were a big film buff, because again, most of the editor's note is about the way the story influenced the film, and so how it served as inspiration and a template for the movie. So it talks in equal parts about the book and the film. And so, yeah, as someone who was a film minor in college, really enjoyed reading it. Incredibly fascinating. Don't think it's for everyone, but I gave it 4 stars. I read Kaya Book 4, and I'm not quite sure all of what happened in this volume. It gets rather wild, but I would still contend that this is the best sci-fantasy story being published right now. We're continuing the story of these siblings, one of which is maybe fated to be the savior of mankind or not. Like, we really don't have a clear answer on that. I still love the framing device being used, of knowing that this is a story being told by the brother about what happened to him in the past. I think that's an excellent framing device. It softens the naivety of the character in the part of the story that we're reading, because he talks about how, like, yeah, I was insufferable, I didn't know what I was talking about, and I wish I had listened to my sister earlier, I wish I had known better. This one also starts with a very interesting flash forward scene. Again, I found a very compelling device going into the issue, because it raises a lot of questions about like what is happening at this point. They're talking about, is what they're talking about in the future the same threat they're facing now? She has an item that's very mysterious, and you're wondering what the origin of that item is. Her arm has also changed considerably in the interim, and so that raises questions. So I think it's doing a very good job of using that framing device and knowing that the story is going to end up in a certain place eventually, but we might not even get that far. But using that to kind of color the story of what we're seeing in the current timeline that we're following. We also have some complications with like the villain side going on here, some like machinations occurring there that I found really compelling. And overall, again, just a really solid story. I gave this 5 stars. I think that so far I don't think there's been a single volume that has been disappointing. The last one I do remember being a little bit frustrating. I think I mentioned why I think that people could be frustrated with volume 3, but I think this one is definitely solid, incredibly fun, action-packed, wildly inventive. It's great. You should pick it up. I read Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife, which is one of the books I received in the Caffeine and Legends box. So was Library of Fates. That was another Caffeine and Legends box book. I like this one quite a bit. This is cozy fantasy about a retired necromancer. Basically, he's pushed into retirement, and they allow him to come into like partial back to life, weird, in between kind of world, and he's so old that he doesn't even remember what his life was like before he was this like dreadlord general. And he starts remembering like his actual passion for life was cooking, and so he wants to open up a restaurant, and he meets an orphan child and befriends her, and he makes some other friends as he is kind of putting this restaurant together, reconnects with his old clan. So it's a lot of, I don't know, it's tackling a lot of different themes that I find will maybe resonate with a little bit older of a crowd. The idea of like retirement and picking up lost passions, human connection, and duty and service versus like, rest and recuperation. A lot of those topics I feel like were handled very well in the story. I really liked the world building here. I thought it was an interesting setup to have this community, this village centered around necromancy, and there is this like burden and guilt he has for what he became at a certain part of his life, and how he's trying to move on from that. So it's a lot of the struggles of like moving on and finding purpose and finding your place in a community. I really liked it. I thought it was heartwarming and fun, and I felt like the stakes were at the right point. I've talked about before that I want like low stakes fantasy, but not no stakes fantasy, and I feel like this one hit the right note of there are very real stakes and very real repercussions for this character and his immediate community, but we're not trying to end like a world-altering threat. So I really appreciated that. So yeah, if you're in the market for another cozy fantasy, if you've read You Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, you've read Legends and Lattes, and you're looking for another cozy fantasy story, I think this one was a hit. Having read some books in that genre that I really despised, I think that this was a really solid one, and you do well to pick it up. I read Ghostlore volumes 2 and 3, and this one was another series that I was trying to finish up. This concludes Ghostlore. It was just the 3 volumes. On my original Ghostlore video, I already addressed that these are each like 4 volumes each, as opposed to a typical 5 or 6, which I still have a little issue with, because this would have normally been wrapped up in 2 volumes, but now they've put it into 3 to get more money. I felt like this ending still felt a little rushed. I liked volume 2. I gave volume 2 4 stars, but volume 3 went down to 3 stars. The story just kind of meanders for a while and then concludes in a way that is not really predicated upon anything that happened up to that point, and kind of just stops the final like big bad that's been built up for such a long time. That final confrontation is not anything memorable or exciting, and so it kind of ended with a whimper, and I was rather disappointed with the conclusion. But as far as the world building goes and the lore here, I found it really, really compelling. I really enjoyed Volume 1. It had some really shocking moments, and but the more and more they kind of peeled back and explained what was going on, the less and less interesting it became, which is kind of one of those unfortunate things with how do you balance like world building with like still keeping some mystery to what's going on. And then, like I said, the conclusion kind of just came out of nowhere. It didn't really, it wasn't anything that seemed like it had been hinted at or discussed. Like a character just kind of decides this is what's going on and turns out to be right. I don't know. I didn't really care for the ending. I did read Puelli, Magi, Madoka, Magica, the Wraith arc, which is a 3-volume series that takes place between Madoka Magica and the movie Rebellion, which I wish I would have known ahead of time. I looked up a reading order for the books, and it said to read the Wraith arc after the movie Rebellion, and I don't know if I agree with that, because this takes place between the two stories. The person who made that list is likely someone who watched the show and the movie and felt like you should watch those first and then kind of get this middle story. Whereas I really feel like you would benefit from reading this because this brings up and defines terms which are core to the way the world works in the movie Rebellion. Whereas that one doesn't really slow down and explain those to you. And it hints at some of the things that are coming up. So I think that it really would be better to read this before the movie, even though it's like non-canon to the anime series. So this once again follows the same set of girls, this time in a world full of wraiths. That's why it's called the Wraith arc. The way that the magic system works is slightly off kilter from the original series for reasons that will be obvious when you read that book. Again, I think that in developing character, in defining terms for what is happening in this world, how this world has changed since the beginning of the story, and in explaining character motivations, I think it's important to read this one in between the two, and I did not do so. So still gave this, I think, 4 stars. Still had fun with it. I like reading about these characters. I'm going to continue picking up the omnibus and the different series as much as I can because I just absolutely love this deconstruction of magical girls, and I love the character, particularly Homura, who is arguably the protagonist of everything after the first the first omnibus. I read Exquisite Corpses #1, which is the most James Tynion book I think I've read up to this point. It really has all the hallmarks of a Tynion book with like a secret cabal and over the top action, like a very violent, visceral story. But this one has a little bit of a twist in that it seems like Tynion kind of set up the story and then is inviting other writers to continue it. The premise here is that the world is run by 13 families and from the 13 original colonies. And every 5 years, they have this competition where they isolate a community and send in their champions to fight each other to the death, as well as create collateral damage. And so what you get are these very like cartoonish villains that are all like themed after something. So each one has a signature weapon. What I suspect is going to happen, because like I said, there's 13 families. what the family that's currently in charge has to kind of sit out of the current battle. So we've got 12 champions. I think so far, like clockwork, someone has died in each volume. And so I think that this is going to be a 12-issue miniseries. I like the idea of kind of having other artists and writers take over and tell the story as it goes. Tynion's credited as the writer for every issue, and Walsh is credited as the artist for every issue. I'd be really curious to see. I'm probably gonna have to look it up because I literally just finished this today. But I'd really like to look up like exactly what the collaborative process was. Is Tynion essentially working as like an editor, or like making sure, like overseeing that certain character beats or certain plot beats get hit? How is Walsh like influencing the art? Is he just like checking it to make sure that characters are recognizable issue to issue? So I'd be interested to see like what is the level of control that these other writers and artists have over the story, because it sounds really neat. And interestingly enough, this is something that it has in common with the Luminous, Fairies, and Mothra, because that was a story written by 3 different authors who just kind of like picked up the story at different beats. So I thought that was a cool connection. I gave it 4 stars. There's a lack of depth here that I expect to see from Tynion. So I'm curious to see if that's going to develop later, because this really is just kind of setting up the story and having the first little bit of this battle royale occurring. I would like to see some more depth of the characters. I'm sure we're going to explore that with backstories and such. But as an initial volume and kind of setting the stage, and knowing what to expect from a Tynion title, I thought it was fun and a good read. So if that sounds compelling to you, pick it up, try it out. I read Kaiju Kamui #2. This has kaijus in it, and that is its saving grace. I gave it 3 stars. I feel like the characters are really what is dragging this down for me. I feel like they are paper thin. It's tropes we've seen a million times. You're not going to get anything new picking this up. But if you are a fan of kaiju and you just want to see some kaiju action, some cool fight scenes, you want that like hot-blooded, oh yeah, this guy is like, he just survived a massive injury and he's still going to get out there and fight and he's so cool, you'll like this. But if you want like character depth and like a compelling narrative or complicated plotting, you're not getting it here. This is just kaijus fighting each other, and we control one of them like we do with like the Ava units. So I don't know. I'm so on this one. Like I said, 3 stars. The action, the kaiju action's enough to sell me on it. But there's not a whole lot else going on here. Another one that I know that I read on audiobook was How to Survive a Horror Story. This one I have complicated feelings on. So on the one hand, for the majority of the story, fine. It's like a locked haunted house mystery. I don't think the scares were really there. Like, I was never frightened because it's so cartoonish. This house is alive and like it will eat somebody at the end of each of these trials. But the issues started coming up about halfway through the book when a character came in who was explaining how the rules worked and what the house would and wouldn't do. And then they broke that rule. And arguably you could say that character was lying and they're being they're being like dishonest and manipulative. They have no reason to tell the truth to these people. But at the same time, they're like, what was the point, right? Like, why set up rules? Why have this big like to do if you're just gonna like not follow them? And then beyond that, the ending is really bothersome. So on some level, this is a revenge story where this character is meting out justice for these people who have wronged him. But the no you kind of the defense of no you like only works if the thing that the people are doing are worse than the thing that you're doing. And some of these people, some of the people in this book who got horribly mangled and killed, and suffered other terrible fates, they didn't do that bad of things. They did questionable things. They definitely hurt this person, I guess, but as far as anybody has said, the guy that they hurt was manipulative, abusive, terrible, temperamental jerk. And even if the things that he's accusing of them are 100% true, some of them are not that bad to get the punishment that they got in here. So it's just, I don't know. Like, and again, like as a writer, you have the freedom to make them anything. You could have made them all horrible monsters, which was like one of the main thrusts of the book is like humans are monsters, but they didn't. They made them do like kind of bad things. Yeah, they probably should have done that. Maybe he should have taken them to court. It also had the like secret cabal like hand waving to kind of get rid of any questions of like, oh, like you can't do this to us. Someone will find out. And they're like, oh, well, he's super rich. He knows all these people. I'm not going to elaborate on who those people are, but trust me when I say that he'll just sweep this all under the rug and no one will ever know what happened. I don't know. I felt that kind of lazy as well. So it ended up as a 3-star. I'm really tempted to put it down to a 2. So I'm gonna have to sit on it for a while. But I only finished that one like a couple of days ago, so still ruminating on it. If you want a fun, goofy, locked house murder fest, it was fine. It was fine for most of the book. I just really didn't care for the end. All right, a couple audiobooks to throw on here. I read Replaceable You by Mary Roach. So this is Mary Roach's newest book, released last year, I believe. And it was okay. Like, it's not my favorite Mary Roach. I think I liked Stiff more than this one. I think that's my favorite of hers so far. This is all about the ways that we grow replacement body parts for like injuries, and also how and also how we're advancing that field to try to have custom replaceable organs, that type of thing. So the concept was very Mary Roach, in that it's an interesting field of science that I don't think gets a lot of like attention and scrutiny these days, and is kind of on the borderline of like just weird enough to kind of fall into her wheelhouse. It was an enjoyable enough read. It's just, like I said, didn't wow me, and so I gave it 3 stars. If you've read other books by Mary Roach, this is pretty much the same. She hits very much the same tone, and it'll give you the same kind of feeling that any of her other titles likely have. I still haven't read Packing for Mars, which we have somewhere, I believe, because I know Amanda has read it, but I like this author quite a bit. It just was not my favorite from her. I'd still check it out if you're interested in like a fun nonfiction that's very like easy to read and captivating. And again, I'll listen to this on audiobook. So the audiobook is also narrated by Mary Roach. So if that is something that you enjoy, especially with like nonfiction books, I like hearing the author read it out to me. So that's also a bonus, and yeah, I would check it out if that is a topic that interests you. I read Mapping the Interior, which is a Stephen Graham Jones book. Previously, I read Night of the Mannequins by this author, and this feels very much in the same wheelhouse. I believe I ended up giving this one 3 stars as well. This has a very tangential relationship to House of Leaves, which is the reason why I believe I picked it up in the first place, although the direction that Jones takes this is quite different, and very much in the same wheelhouse as Night of the Mannequins. So I would not be surprised if this is just like a style that he tends to have. I thought it was okay. This is another one that I gave 3 stars just because it felt very much too similar to things I've heard from this author before. And I didn't care for the way that the ending turned out. It was not for me. But it is a novella. It is incredibly short. I believe the audiobook, which is what I listened to, was only about 2 hours, maybe 2.5, somewhere in there. So if you want something quick, something a little spooky, I think the next event is Summerween for me, for spooky books in particular. But I think I enjoyed Night of the Mannequins a bit more just because I wasn't expecting it. It was a fresh narration style, and just to see him pretty much do the same type of devolution of the protagonist's mental state in this book as well, just it hit too many of the same notes for me to really come away impressed by it. So 3 stars, fine, kind of spooky, didn't like how it ended. Those are my thoughts. I listened to Welcome to Nightvale, which I wasn't even aware was a book. Now, the book is based off of a podcast, so the podcast did come first, but I was listening to the podcast like back in, I want to say 2020, 2019, somewhere in there, and hadn't thought about it in a while. I just did a search for available audiobooks, and this popped up, and so I thought that sounds kind of cool. I really enjoyed this one. It has those kind of odd non sequiturs that the podcast has, and it's narrated by the same person who did the podcast. So again, that's a very helpful thing, because it sent me right back into that same feeling. The plot here deals with King City, and this idea of like this location that they can't get to, and they talk about how the way that they describe how impossible it is to reach this location, but it also dealt with like families and memory, and how difficult it is to live in a world or live in a city like Nightvale. And I thought that was an interesting take, because the podcast tends to be, the podcast is framed as like a nightly public radio show, and so it doesn't really have to delve into any of the like emotion behind all these crazy things that are happening around town. But I thought grounding it with these characters and actually seeing how living in this world with its crazy rules and its, oftentimes very dangerous places affects people. And there were some really poignant moments in here, which was surprising. But also I really liked just having the crazy world and the absolute nonsense of like librarians are evil monsters that you have to avoid, and there's this piece of paper that you can't throw away. You like crumple it up or rip it apart, and then it's back in your hand. There were also some callbacks to the podcast, which was fun. They do mention the dog park a couple of times, which I think is one of the more well-known bits from the podcast. So yeah, if you're a fan of the podcast, if you're a fan of absurdist literature like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think you would enjoy this quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars, really liked it for all those reasons, and also giving me kind of a nostalgia hit with thinking back on the podcast. I read the Lilies on audiobook, even though I've got a physical copy, because I was at a school event and it basically took a day to listen through it. This is time travel, time loop, kind of. Although I think it is hampered a bit by the convoluted nature of the time construct, the framework we've presented here. It's also dark academia, which I know is a big genre right now. So if you're a fan of that, you might want to pick this up. So this is, yes, this is sapphic dark academia time loop, where a group of girls finds themselves having to specifically relive their most terrible moment, like their worst day. And it just so happens that for all of them, the worst day was yesterday. And we gradually learn more about what's going on in the school, who the Lilies are. It's like this elite group within this academy, and of course they're doing nefarious, questionable things in the shadows, so we learn a bit more about that. And then the end kind of just goes off the rails, which was kind of fun in a way, but also felt like really hand-waving a lot of the actual conflict of the book, and not having us have to deal with the actual repercussions of either our actions on our worst day or of the revelations that we learned about what had happened that night and about the people around us. So that I didn't like. I didn't love the way that it ended. It was a little bit too clean and neat, and I feel like it made it to where the characters don't really have to think about or confront what happened, even though it's really hard to describe the end of this without spoilers. Maybe I'll do a full review with spoilers to talk about my more complicated feelings on this ending. But ultimately, I think it ended up as a 3-star. Again, it was good. I felt like mechanics of the time loop were a little bit much, and I really didn't care for the ending. But other than that, it was a fun ride. So if you are into sapphic, dark academia, or time loops, check it out. It could be fun. I read Agnès Albert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett, the author of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is her new series. I hope it's a series. I haven't heard anything about a follow-up, but I can only imagine it'll be another trilogy. This was a lot of fun. I loved it. Another cozy fantasy story where the stakes are high for the immediate vicinity. There is talk of like a global apocalypse, but it's already it was in the past. It already happened. We already dealt with that. We're talking about cats now and trying to find cats good homes. If you liked Emily Wilde, you're gonna like this. It has a lot of the same hallmarks. We've got our main character who's a little socially awkward, not nearly as bad as Emily Wilde, although I still identified with some of her quirks. When she becomes overwhelmed emotionally, she cries, whether it's like good emotion or bad emotion. She's a people pleaser. She wants everyone to be happy. She tries to see the good in everyone. I liked all of that. So she's less disconnected than Emily Wilde. She has a sister who's a little bit more outgoing than her, and I liked the moments where Agnès was trying to be brave or be assertive, and she was thinking about like, what would my sister do in this situation? I need to just like channel her and try to do that. I also really liked her interaction with one of the other characters in here, who most people fear this character. It's like this powerful magician, but because Agnès is so passionate about her shop and like what she wants to do, and also like organizing things, she wants things to be orderly. She's intimidating to this guy, and I found that really good. The romance really worked for me, and moved slowly. I know that is true for Emily Wilde as well, arguably, but here I feel like it worked really well, especially given Agnès' past, which I won't go into. But yeah, again, another cozy fantasy. If you want to read a book about mystical cats and trying to find home for animals, starring a quirky girl who's falling in love with a magician in a world where magic is kind of suspect. It's got a lot of layers and has very comfortable world building. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. You should check it out. It was great. So, and I think that's it. Is that 54? I have 54 up here. That's how many I read. So if I missed any, I'll come back and address those. But yeah, that was everything I read in January and February. As always, thanks for coming by and listening to me ramble for literal hours about everything that I read over the last few months. I hope your reading journey is going well. I'm doing quite well. I feel like I've done a pretty good job for these last few months. Let me know down in the comments below, what have you been reading lately? What have you been reading since we last chatted in these last couple of months? As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, which will not be 2 months from now, take care. I read Puelli Magi. I'm gonna get it. I read Puelli Magi and Madoka Magica, the movie Rebellion.
Puella.
What'd I say? Puelli?
Puelli.
Oh man, come on.